you think I had something to do with her disappearance? Ever do you believe that?
Well, let's see. How can I believe that? How can I believe that? How could I believe anything for...
I am not evil like that.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. I am not evil like that. It's in a way quite a clever statement, because who would believe that someone could be capable of doing what actually happened? It was something that was frankly unbelievable. But the truth turned out that he was evil like that. He was absolutely evil. Until Amber came forward, Laci's mother and brother were still publicly supporting Scott to the media. I have to say, in court but also on camera, Amber is a strong witness. I think a lot of people underestimated her, including Scott. She's articulate, she's no pushover, and she also in a way acted in a really moral way, kind of as Laci's keeper in a real sense. Even so many years later, she could have declined to be interviewed, and yet she steps forward. She participates. She makes her voice heard, but indirectly, she brings Laci's story, the side that you don't really always know about, to light. Amber still is in a real sense a voice for Laci. Good for her. I have to say, only two people in this case seem to have, as far as I was concerned, a very clear, unadulterated sense of what is going on in terms of who Scott was. Who do you think they are? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Welcome to the many of you who have recently subscribed. I'll be doing quite a few more videos on this series, so stay tuned. I can also dip into the court testimony in terms of Amber Fry, so if you're interested in that, let me know. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please like, share, leave a comment. Bear in mind, I don't really do live streams, so if you want to make a contribution, please do hit the thanks button. And let's get started. So as far as I'm concerned, two people in this case who have a very solid sense of Scott are Modesto Police Department Detective Al Brachini and CBS News Sacramento reporter Gloria Gomez. A cop and a reporter, two local people, a man and a woman who were down in the trenches working this case. Everyone else seemed to be in varying stages of denial and just being, to some extent, thinking about the case in emotional terms. One can also not overstate the importance of Amber recording her conversations with Scott. At trial, Scott refused to testify, but it was thanks to Amber that his voice was heard in court, and Scott, in his own words, wasn't very convincing. Something else that also came out was Amber's surprise that her own recordings were heard not just by the police and by lawyers, but played in court so that the public got to hear them. And I think that was something that surprised her, also surprised Nicole Kessinger. Now, two of the biggest moments in the midsection of the Netflix series, halfway through the second episode, both have to do with the search for Laci in San Francisco Bay.
At what point are you going to tell me in person, Scott?
Once we find her.
What was that?
Once we find her.
Once we find her, what?
And that will be any resolution, and I will be...
And of course, did that happen once Laci was found? Was there a resolution that made Scott look good, and was there a resolution that made Scott more capable of giving a explanation? Now let's deal with those two big moments from the midsection of the second episode. Number one, Scott scouts the search. Detective Brachini makes such a fantastic point when he said, because they had a tracker on Scott's truck, and this was a new truck, mind you, a white Dodge, I believe, they could tell Scott was all the way out at San Francisco Bay keeping tabs on the search. And I think he made something like 4 visits in one day on one particular occasion.
For 3 minutes, and then he drives away. And he came back 4 more times.
He wouldn't contact anybody. He wouldn't get a hold of any of our cops or any of the people that were on shore. He wouldn't.
And so just as you've heard there, instead of actively being part of the search, I mean, back in Modesto, he's present, he's doing admin and whatnot, although he's sort of got a cap on and is not engaging with the media at all. Out here, he's completely hands off. Doesn't he need to talk to anyone? Doesn't he need to tell anyone he's there? Is this the behavior of a man who really wants Laci to be found? Or is this the behavior of a man who really doesn't want her to be found?
It was more like he was going there to check to see where we were searching, to reassure himself that maybe we weren't going to find her.
And this brings us to the second huge moment in the second episode, the false alarm. The cops describe finding an object using sonar that appeared to be a torso with arms spread wide, and the detective actually opens his arms to sort of role play what they seem to be looking at. Not to be unsympathetic, but Laci's friends were having a slumber party in lieu of Laci's baby shower, and there still seemed to be this idea of holding on to hope that Laci would somehow just walk back into people's lives. And I think this was about 2 weeks into the search for her. And we saw the same denial from the defense in the Suzanne Morphew case and the Kelsey Bereth case.
She's not coming back.
Obviously, the cops had already made this mental shift. That's why they were searching for Laci in the Bay. Well, they weren't searching for a living Laci in the Bay. They'd already reached that sort of milestone in terms of their thinking. Now, the false alarm turned out to be a rusted ship's anchor.
Concluded our search today at the Berkeley Marina. The dive team's located in the area where we were searching, and the object that we were concerned about ended up being an anchor that is sunk down into the bottom part of the bay, and there are no other objects located in the area.
But this search and this false alarm showed where the cops' heads were at and that they were on the right track. And this had to be worrying Scott Peterson. The crazy part is that the search for Laci in the Bay actually never succeeded. You know, no one actually found Laci underwater, divers, sonar, none of that actually worked. And I think a reason for that is because Laci wasn't only wrapped in chicken wire, but also a kind of a top. And that would possibly have shielded her from something like sonar and from her being seen easily. And so it was actually the Bay, only once the Bay gave Laci up and she washed ashore that she was found. And so that is certainly something that is quite chilling to think about. But there's also a third area that is quite stunning. The detective relates a story about Sharon, Laci's mother, calling Scott to tell him what the cops found, saying that, what they'd found an anchor. Scott didn't answer, but he did listen to Sharon's voicemail, and the wiretap was actually able to pick up his response. Sharon, as you can hear in her voice, is still being nice to Scott in this call, giving him information, giving him the benefit of the doubt. Listen carefully for Scott's reaction.
Hi, Scott. This is Mom. It's about 1:45. Just wanted to know, I just got a call from Ron Cloward. He's at Marina, and it was a boat anchor. Of course, we knew it wasn't Laci, but I just wanted you to know. I'm going to call your house.
If you were listening carefully, Scott gives a low whistle, a whistle of relief. One does have to wonder, what other interpretation could anyone give this reaction? How does his family listen to this and make sense of it? I guess they might say the whistle is manufactured or a sound distortion. The other thing is how Sharon is on completely the wrong page at this late stage. Where does she think Laci is? Does she think Laci is still alive? All right, so we're at about the halfway point analyzing the series. I have to say, from this point onwards, I found I was getting quite emotional. It's not just that I was invested in this case because I wrote 3 books about it. I was also in front of the Peterson house, that same greenhouse in Modesto. I walked around San Francisco Bay. I've even driven all the way down to San Luis Obispo, down the California coast where Scott and Laci first met. I think one of the things that most upsets me is how long it took Laci's mother and brother to come around to suspecting Scott. I mean, until Amber came forward, they were still publicly supporting him to the media. Before I sign off, I want to throw a bit of a spanner in the works. I want to test your critical thinking. So turn on your imagination and let's see how good your critical thinking is. If Scott Peterson had Laci in the boat, and if he went down the boat ramp, and if he put that little boat in the water, what huge risk was he taking? Any ideas? Let me know in the comments. For those interested in the JonBenet Ramsey case, I'll be putting up a video later today on the little chair that breaks the entire case. So look out for that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.